In a weathered garage by the side of a dusty road, a young black mechanic toils in silence, meticulously saving every dollar to ensure his ailing mother's survival. However, when the ambulance transporting a dying woman malfunctions in close proximity, he is compelled to make a choice between preserving her life or maintaining his employment, ultimately deciding to give up everything. Unbeknownst to him, the woman he rescues possesses a strength beyond his wildest dreams, and his noble deed is poised to return and transform his existence in ways he never anticipated. Before we immerse ourselves in this tale, please share where you're tuning in from. Your thoughts are always welcome. The sun had just begun to peek over the weathered rooftops of South Dalton when the initial clash of metal against steel echoed from the modest garage tucked between a liquor store and a deserted laundromat. The atmosphere within was dense, a blend of engine grease and lingering bitterness. A fan groaned ineffectively above. The world beyond was gradually stirring to life. Darnell Harris had been awake for hours inside. He knelt next to the undercarriage of a 2003 Ford Explorer, sleeves pushed up to his elbows, his dark brown skin shining with sweat even in the early morning light. The rhythmic sound of his socket wrench echoed in the quiet, each rotation a quiet rebellion against the forces that sought to wear him away. These days, all he required was his trusty box of tools. And time itself. His work shirt hung loosely on him, faded and oversized, likely a cast-off from someone who believed they were doing a good deed. The boots bore the marks of wear, much like the driver's side window of the aging Dodge where he found his rest, stationed just beyond the lot. It once belonged to his mother, long before her kidneys began to fail, before the hospital bills overshadowed her joy. At this moment, it was everything he possessed: residence, anticipation, remembrance. Stanley, the garage owner, a stout, fair-skinned man with a belly that announced his presence before he did, strode by, his heavy boots resonating against the concrete floor. His thinning grey hair was slicked back, glistening with more grease than the engine block Darnell was working on. Stanley cast a quick look at the clock before turning his gaze to Darnell, his eyes narrowing as if he detected an unpleasant odor. "You still working on that?" he snapped, cleaning his hands on a pristine rag that had never touched a car. Darnell rose slowly, brushing sweat from his forehead. "Just a few more bolts, sir. I'll have it ready by noon," Stanley scoffed. "You mentioned that 2 hours ago." "I assure you I didn't sleep through my alarm, Mr. Stanley," Darnell responded, his voice calm, steady, respectful, yet resolute. "It's a worn-out gasket, required more effort than anticipated." Stanley moved in closer, his tone shifting to a patronizing whisper. "You folks always have reasons. Can fix a carburetor but can't fix your own damn life." The words landed with a sting, yet Darnell remained unyielding. The silence spoke on his behalf. His jaw clenched just a bit. He cast his gaze downward, swallowed with difficulty, then raised his eyes again, locking onto Stanley's with a look that neither pleaded nor submitted. "I'm here to work," he declared, unwavering as the tool he gripped. Stanley scoffed. "Then pick up the pace. A client is arriving in an hour from the corporate sector with substantial financial resources. He desires his BMW completed in 30. And I don't need you complicating it with your meticulous approach. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Darnell nodded once, not out of agreement, but because engaging in an argument was a luxury he simply couldn't afford. As Stanley pivoted and strode away, snapping at a younger mechanic engrossed in texting behind the tire racks, Darnell let out a slow breath. He cleaned his hands on his jeans, which were marked and frayed at the knee, and lowered himself once more. Beneath the belly of the car, the world felt quiet again, predictable, a place where bolts either fit or they didn't. Yet, even here the weight of that voice echoed, "You people." That bitter drawl passed down like a family heirloom from the days of chain-link fences and side entrances. Darnell wasn't new to that tone. He'd heard it in classrooms, in job interviews, in the silence of store clerks watching him too closely. But today it struck a bit harder, perhaps due to the discomfort in his lower back from dozing off in the driver's seat, perhaps because his mum's latest test results were troubling, perhaps it was merely fatigue, yet still. He secured the final bolt, The shop door swung open, ushering in a wave of warm morning air, and something else. Screams. The scream resonated oddly, as if it were out of place in a realm dominated by grease and metal. The sound sliced through the morning air like shattered glass, abrupt and piercing, jolting Darnell from beneath the chassis. Beyond the open bay doors, across the narrow street, a silver SUV was half-mounted on the curb, its front end billowing steam. A young woman in scrubs, hair pulled back, her face ashen, was gesturing wildly, shouting toward the garage. "Kindly! Assistance is required, someone! Our car has just given up and it's not functioning properly." Darnell acted without a moment's pause. His legs acted before his mind could catch up. He seized his personal toolbox from the bench, tucked it under one arm, and dashed across the lot. "Where the hell are you going?" Stanley's voice boomed behind him, filled with intensity and fury. Darnell paused, turning back for a fleeting moment. "There's a woman in that car. She's not doing well. The nurse claims the engine is beyond repair. If I can get it running—" Stanley marched forward, his face flushed, finger pointing emphatically into the air. "No, you're not leaving. That BMW has to be finished in 30 minutes. I promised a paying customer, and you can't just leave." "Because you heard a scream?" Darnell swallowed hard, gripping the handle of his rusted toolbox tighter. "I'll make it right. Just let me—" "I said no." Stanley moved in closer, his voice lowering to a fierce whisper. "How you leave this place? There's no need to return. Your time here is coming to an end. Do you hear me, young man?" Yet the term, once more, felt akin to a tether. Darnell's jaw tightened. The sun blazed relentlessly, sweat trickling down his temple. Yet the frost in Stanley's voice penetrated deeper than the sweltering heat could ever touch. He cast a glance back at the SUV. The nurse gently swung open the passenger door. Within, he observed an elderly woman, frail and grey-skinned, her chest barely rising with each shallow breath. The nurse struggled with a portable oxygen tank that seemed uncooperative. The engine, in contrast, lay utterly lifeless. The path was far too isolated, without Uber, without a backup ambulance, and without time. Darnell glanced back at Stanley, and for a fleeting moment their gazes intertwined. "Then I suppose I'm finished," he murmured softly. Not with anger, not with pride, just a sense of unwavering conviction. He pivoted and dashed forward. By the moment he arrived at the SUV, the nurse's eyes glistened with tears. "She's going down," she gasped. "We were moving her to the regional center. The onboard oxygen system is malfunctioning. I communicated via radio. Backup's an hour out." Darnell lifted the hood, casting a swift look at the engine. The timing belt has been shredded. The radiator has developed a crack. It would require an hour and components he lacked to get it moving. He turned his head sharply in the direction of the nurse. "What about the power system for her equipment?" She gazed at him, filled with urgency. "It's dead." "We believe the alternator has malfunctioned." Without a response, Darnell knelt beside the rear of the SUV, opened the equipment hatch, and gazed at the medtech system. "Power line is damaged. Compressor fan malfunction." Yet it remained within the realm of possibility. "Just give me 10 minutes, he muttered. "I can make this work." "Are you able to?" she asked, her voice trembling. He remained silent. He simply opened his toolbox and got to work. In a matter of moments, he dismantled the damaged power relay, reconfigured the inverter bypass using a fused line crafted from his own jumper cable, and removed the auxiliary fan from his personal vehicle, his sanctuary, to install on the rig. He didn't give it a second thought. It was a natural response. Require, and something more profound. Perhaps it was recollection. His mother struggled for breath during one of her episodes last year, or the anguish of witnessing another's pain while feeling utterly powerless to assist. Perhaps it was something different. Whatever it was, it propelled him with a swiftness beyond mere footsteps. The nurse maintained firm pressure on the patient's chest, counting steadily, as Darnell knelt in a tense silence, urging life into the machine. At last, with a flicker and a gentle buzz, the compressor sprang into action. Air surged forth. The woman's chest rose. The nurse inhaled sharply. Darnell pressed on relentlessly. He was already pulling tools from under the SUV, crawling beneath it, evaluating what else he could exchange. From his own vehicle, he ripped out the alternator, the ignition module, and a significant portion of his remaining dignity. 15 minutes passed, and the engine coughed to life, then erupted with a powerful roar. "Destable," the nurse exclaimed. "We're ready to proceed." The SUV sped off, leaving behind a swirl of dust and optimism. Darnell found himself solitary. In the center of the street, breathless, his shirt drenched, hands stained with grease, the sun glaring fiercely above. With a resounding thud, the garage door closed behind him, sealing off the world beyond. He ambled back at a leisurely pace. His vehicle, his sole refuge, lay in ruins, and he found himself without a job once more. Yet his stride carried no hint of remorse, just quiet. A lengthy, vacant afternoon stretches on, poised for a start. The following 2 days unfolded in a haze of sunburned stillness and the distant drone of vehicles. Darnell discovered a secluded spot behind a hardware store lot, removed from the hue. Clamor, shielded from prying gazes. His Dodge, the sole refuge for his weary soul, now lay inanimate, stripped of its essence, the hood ajar as if it were sighing its final farewell. The components he had dismantled to aid an unknown individual now left him abandoned once more. Every morning, he strolled into town clad in the same oil-stained attire, pausing at auto shops and small warehouses, seeking employment. Identical response, varied expression. Some exhibited courtesy, while others did not. However, none of them were employed. They noticed the grease, yet overlooked the hands. They perceived the hue, not the essence. As dusk approached on the second day, he found himself behind the wheel of his malfunctioning car, eyelids heavy, observing the warm glow of the setting sun slip away through the shattered glass. His hands lay on the dashboard, fingers fidgeting, as if they yearned to mend something, anything, just to feel significant once more. The photograph of his mother, affixed beside the speedometer, danced gently in the soft breeze flowing through the open window. He gazed at her smile, exhausted yet fulfilled, and remorse consumed him. He had kept the news of his job loss from her. He hadn't mentioned that he might not have enough this week to cover her medications. His stomach rumbled, yet he chose to disregard it. The sensation of hunger was something I knew well. Disillusionment. Not quite. He had chosen wisely. He was aware of that. Yet awareness alone did not nourish you. It failed to repair vehicles, and it certainly didn't alleviate the pain of feeling unseen. Suddenly his phone vibrated. The noise caught him off guard. No one reached out to him anymore. He cast his gaze downward. Unrecognized number. His thumb lingered for a moment before he responded. "Greetings?" His voice carried a sense of caution, roughened by exhaustion. A woman's voice, both inviting and resolute, replied, "Mr. Harris, I'm Carolyn. I am reaching out on behalf of Miss Eleanor Whitmore. She is eager to meet with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at Whitmore Technologies. She mentioned to convey that she remembers kindness well." For a brief instant, Darnold remained silent. He gazed at his own reflection, taking in the roughness of his hands, the worn fabric of his shirt, and the faint glow of the dead battery light on the dashboard. He was perplexed. He questioned the authenticity of it all. Yet the voice persisted softly. "Mr. Harris, do you think you can attend?" He cleared his throat softly. "Absolutely, I'll be there." The call concluded, and in the quiet that ensued, after 2 long days, Darnell reclined in his chair and exhaled slowly, savoring the moment. Not a sense of relief. He had not arrived yet. Yet there exists something akin to potential, a whisper of what could be. He gazed upward, the stars starting to emerge from the twilight, and murmured, "All right, one last chance." Morning gently unfolded through a veil of soft fog as Darnell stood before the gleaming glass doors of Whitmore Technologies. The structure ascended like a towering beacon of reflective brilliance beneath a soft azure expanse, a sight that appeared too pristine for the marks of worn footwear. He shifted restlessly, clad in his sole-collared shirt, meticulously ironed with a hotel hairdryer at a round-the-clock laundromat, paired with faded jeans. He had scrubbed the oil from his nails until his fingertips stung, yet some shadows lingered, refusing to be washed away. A young woman clad in a grey suit welcomed him in the lobby, holding a clipboard and offering a warm smile. "Mr. Harris, please follow me." No identification. Verify, no inquiries, as though they had anticipated his arrival, as if he were one of their own. As they strolled through the pristine white marble corridors adorned with framed photographs, labs and blueprints, the faces of engineers who bore no resemblance to him surrounded them, each step resonating with the sound of his boots against the floor. With a graceful motion, the assistant swung open a towering wooden door and invited him in with a subtle gesture. And there she stood, perched in an unadorned chair by a window that bathed the room in warm golden light, the woman he had last encountered, pale and gasping in the rear of a SUV, now exuded a sense of vitality. She appeared not youthful, but rather full of life, vibrant and in control. Her silver-white hair flowed in gentle waves, while her eyes gleamed with a sharp, intelligent brilliance, elevated to embrace the instant he arrived. "Mr. Harris," she said, her voice imbued with a blend of warmth and subtle command. "I appreciate your presence here." She stood up gradually, approached with confidence, and offered her hand. I never imagined I would have the chance to grasp the hand that rescued me. Darnell accepted it with caution, as if it could vanish at any moment if he grasped it too firmly. You appear quite radiant, Mum," he whispered, his tone humble, filled with admiration. She offered a faint smile. "Your support has truly uplifted my spirits." Without hesitation, she motioned toward a leather chair positioned opposite hers. "Kindly take a seat. I would like to engage in a conversation." He perched carefully, straight-backed, his hands placed lightly on his legs. "I was in the area for the weekend," she began, her eyes drifting toward the window. "Without staff or bodyguards, I sought tranquility. My doctor advised against going alone, but I believed I had a better understanding. I fell to the ground in that diner's parking lot, and if you hadn't stepped in—" She paused, her voice trembling slightly, then composed herself. "Words cannot express the depth of my gratitude." Darnell shifted, visibly uncomfortable with the burden of appreciation. "I acted without expectation, Ma'am, simply fulfilling what was necessary." She gazed at him, examining him as if he were an extraordinary device, crafted not from metal but from determination. "That's precisely why you are worthy of it all." She opened a small drawer beside her and retrieved an envelope. "This," she said gently, "will take care of your mother's medical expenses. Each invoice, each procedure, no bureaucratic hurdles." Darnell stared, taken aback. "Excuse me?" "She is worthy of tranquility," Eleanor persisted, "and you are entitled to find your breath once more." She subsequently grasped another envelope and extended it forward. "What about this? $500,000. Given freely, without any expectations." Stillness. The air was heavy in the room as Darnell fixed his gaze on the envelope, then shifted his eyes back to her. His hands remained still, his breath trapped within his chest. At last, he found his voice. "I cannot accept that." Her brows arched, just a hint of surprise. "What's stopping us?" His voice carried a soft yet unwavering strength. "Since my motivation wasn't driven by a desire for recognition, and financial gain holds no value for me." He looked down at his hands. "I desire to engage in work and generate income. That's all I've ever sought." Eleanor observed him for a moment, longer, then gradually smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time since his arrival. "In that case, I would like to extend an opportunity to you. Whitmore Technologies boasts a multitude of departments. Your expertise positions you well to take on a leadership role in our power systems division." Darnell shook his head in disbelief. "With all due respect, ma'am, if I choose a shortcut now, I will forever question whether I could have traversed the entire path. I will begin from the ground up. Allow me to demonstrate my abilities." Once more, silence enveloped the space, yet it carried a distinct quality, a silence steeped in respect and understanding. Eleanor gave a slight nod. "So you'll begin on Monday internship program in engineering. You will be under the supervision of a gentleman named Craig Dalton. I have confidence that you can manage him." Darnell offered a subtle smile. "I've faced greater challenges." Eleanor let out a gentle laugh before rising to her feet. "I feel pleased. "I sense that this won't be our final encounter, Mr. Harris." As Darnell exited the building, stepping into the bright morning light with the envelope containing his mother's medical release form firmly in hand, he hardly resembled a person who had just declined $500,000. He appeared as if he had just discovered his own path. The next Monday, Darnell entered through the side entrance of Whitmore Technologies' West Wing, sporting a fresh pair of steel-toed boots and a company-issued shirt that still bore the crisp creases from its packaging. The structure stood in stark contrast to the dingy garages he was familiar with, overly pristine and eerily silent, as if it had been untouched by grime for ages. Yet the machines felt like old friends, their tools communicating in a dialect he understood well. And that sufficed. He found himself in the Power Systems Lab, an expansive space bathed in bright light and resonating with a harmonious buzz of meticulous order. Wires were arranged with precision, consoles emitted soft glows, and lines of text flowed seamlessly into the terminals. In this context, errors had consequences beyond mere financial loss. They demand trust. Darnell understood that earning trust would require double the effort on his part. At the far end of the lab, Craig Dalton, the lead floor supervisor, held his ground. In their early 40s, tall and lean, dressed in pressed slacks and a button-down shirt that seemed to have an aversion to sweat. His blonde hair was styled with such precision that it appeared almost as if it had been meticulously painted on. His stance, with arms crossed and chin slightly tilted, unmistakably conveyed his disdain for surprises. Darnell Harris turned out to be quite the unexpected revelation. Craig remained expressionless as Darnell drew near. No handshake was offered, just examined him as if assessing a damaged piece that someone was attempting to sell as pristine. "Therefore, you're the one Ms. Whitmore endorsed," he stated matter-of-factly. "Let's establish something right away. Your purpose is to absorb knowledge, not to take charge. You adhere to directives, you refrain from inquiry, and you don't behave like a champion with a privileged advantage. This is not an act of charity." Darnell locked eyes with him, steady and unwavering. "Got it," he responded. Without a hint of sarcasm or apology, there was a calm professionalism that caused Craig's jaw to tighten just a bit. The initial week was subdued, yet it offered no mercy. Craig assigned Darnell the most undesirable tasks: inventory counts, heavy lifts, cable rerouting tasks beneath the floor grid, wishing perhaps he might crack a bit. However, Darnell chose not to. He showed up ahead of time, lingered until the end, and jotted down observations without any prompting. His gaze was perpetually attentive, soaking in every detail. When a seasoned technician found himself grappling with a malfunctioning voltage regulator, it was Darnell who approached with a calm demeanor and suggested, "If you flip that diode and ground it back through the rear port, it'll stabilize it." It was successful. Straightforward, no acknowledgement needed. Rumors began to circulate. As the second week drew to a close, the junior techs started to gravitate towards him during their breaks, eager to ask questions and absorb his techniques. He always remained humble. He never issued commands, yet there was an undeniable quality in his explanations, simple, straightforward, and unpretentious, that drew people in and compelled them to pay attention. And Craig observed. One lunch break, Craig walked past the workbench where Darnell was drawing a circuit model for a new intern who seemed hardly old enough to shave. "Have you gathered a few admirers?" Craig commented, his tone laced with disdain. "Be cautious, they could begin to believe you fit in here." Darnell raised his gaze gradually. "I truly belong here," he stated, his voice steady yet firm. With a sly grin, Craig leaned in a bit closer and murmured just above a whisper, "While you may wow the youngsters, Harris, this location wasn't designed for someone like you to scale. Stay focused, and perhaps you'll endure." The sting didn't come from the words themselves. It was their comforting presence. Darnell had encountered variations of that line throughout his entire existence. At times it came from educators, at other moments from law enforcement, and occasionally from neighbors who greeted him warmly yet secured their homes as he passed. Yet, every time, he opted to heed a distinct voice, the one within him that urged, "Create regardless." That afternoon, as he scrubbed grease from his palms and packed up for the day, one of the junior engineers leaned over and remarked, "You're different, man. You truly bring clarity to this material. Don't allow Dalton to affect you." Darnell offered a subtle smile before shifting his gaze toward Craig's office. Craig observed him through the glass. Not in a straightforward manner, merely enough to give the illusion that he wasn't. Darnell faced his locker again, speaking in a hushed tone. "He will not." Weeks slipped by, yet the atmosphere within the lab became increasingly frigid, not in warmth but in demeanor. Darnell's name now floated through conversations in hushed tones, laced with a blend of admiration and a touch of apprehension. His concepts had started to infiltrate the team trials. The repairs he made were efficient, minimizing mistakes and conserving time. He had shed the label of the overlooked intern. He was the person everyone relied on. Craig Dalton loathed it. From behind his glass office walls, Craig observed a cluster of interns congregating around Darnell's station. He observed the nods, the laughter, the sporadic expressions of gratitude that positioned Darnell as the silent focal point of attention, and it seared. That was the moment everything started to unravel. Initially, a diagnostic tablet disappeared. Next, a collection of finely crafted instruments from the locked compartment. Nothing overly theatrical, merely sufficient to build suspense and provoke curiosity. Craig submitted discreet reports to senior management, highlighting internal security issues and anomalies linked to unauthorized access. He refrained from using names. There was no necessity for him to do so. Finally, the day of the showcase arrived. An important client, a global energy company, was set to visit the lab. Eleanor Whitmore will be present, joined by investors and prospective partners. The floor had not seen a demo of this magnitude in a year. Craig had devoted weeks to his preparation. He assembled a team for the prototype presentation, 2 seasoned engineers, 1 software technician, and with some hesitation, Darnell. His inclusion wasn't out of desire, but rather due to the fact that Darnell's recent fixes had brought stability to the core module. 3 days prior to the presentation, Craig summoned Darnell to his office. His tone was serene, precise, and measured. "We are placing our confidence in you to handle the hardware checks. The main floor will be accessible to you on Sunday evening. Final diagnostics, security calibration, the standard procedure." Darnell nodded, maintaining his usual professionalism. "Got it." On Sunday night, Darnell found himself in solitude, immersed in his work. The laboratory stood silent, its lights reduced to a gentle glow, while the machines murmured softly, reminiscent of far-off whispers in slumber. He navigated with deliberate precision, examining circuits, securing connections, conducting one test after another. He carefully adjusted the relay board, recorded the modification, and meticulously double-checked everything not once, but twice. As the clock struck midnight, he had completed his task. He exited the system, secured the cabinet, and made his way out. On Monday morning, chaos lingered in anticipation. The prototype failed to boot, the cooling system was disabled, internal files were corrupted, and when the access log was examined, one name stood out prominently: Darnell Harris. The chamber resonated with hushed murmurs. Craig burst in, commanding with urgency, "Take it offline before it fries." Then, with careful precision, Craig turned toward the "We placed our faith in" someone inexperienced, and now we were mere hours away from a complete disaster. Darnell moved ahead, composed yet perplexed. I examined each system and it was functioning flawlessly. Craig remained calm. There was no necessity for him to do so. His voice was soft, chilling. "It seems you either overlooked something or you played a part in it." There it stood. The allegation required no evidence. It merely demanded uncertainty. Darnell's expression remained unchanged, yet his eyes revealed a contrasting narrative. Surprise, deceit, the subtle heaviness that settles in your chest upon the realization that you've been deceived, yet lack the evidence to substantiate it. However, without a word, he pivoted back to the equipment, his hands instinctively moving toward the tools. "Allow me 20 minutes, please." Craig let out a derisive laugh. "Time for salvage has passed." "Your work is complete," "Proceed." Yet Darnell remained still. He opened the casing, examined the board, his eyes sharpening with focus. The coolant seal was redirected. Intentionally. He kept it to himself, yet he was aware. And Craig was aware that he was aware. He raised his gaze, locking eyes with him. "I'll fix it," Darnell said, his voice steady and resolute. "That's simply my craft." With sleeves rolled up and no moment to switch from his grease-stained shirt, he set to work. Even with the limited time, Darnell approached the situation with a composure that could only stem from someone who had faced similar challenges in the past, teetering on the brink of skepticism and rejection. His hands danced with speed and accuracy. He reconnected the coolant relay, bypassed the compromised circuit, and restabilized the firmware loop using only a handheld scanner and an unwavering determination to carve out his own identity. When the investors showed up, the prototype was operating at an impressive 97% efficiency. It may not have been flawless, but it sufficed to ensure the doors remained open. The assembly convened in the central bay, clad in tailored suits and silk ties, the sound of sharp heels echoing against the polished concrete. At the forefront stood Craig Dalton, freshly shaven, impeccably pressed, wearing a practiced smile and gripping the clicker firmly. However, an issue arose. Just as Craig was about to start, the door at the back of the room swung open, and in walked Eleanor Whitmore. She remained silent initially, her gaze sweeping across the room, momentarily resting on Craig before shifting to Darnell, who lingered at the control panel, his shirt marked and hands bearing the evidence of reality. Craig cleared his throat, preparing to speak. "It's a pleasure to see you, Mrs. Whitmore. We encountered a small obstacle earlier, but everything is now—" Eleanor lifted her hand. "Preserve it." A hush enveloped the room. She glanced at her assistant, who brought in a sizable monitor and linked it to the lab's security console. "Last month I had this room equipped with discreet surveillance," Eleanor stated coolly, her gaze unwavering from Craig. "There have been reports regarding tools that are unaccounted for and access that has not been documented. I sought understanding, not conjecture." Craig tensed, his grin disappeared. With a single tap, the screen illuminated and time reversed. There he stood, Craig Dalton, solitary in the lab on a Sunday night. Footage from camera 4 revealed his entrance through the back door utilizing a bypass code. Camera 7 captured him as he opened the mainframe housing. The footage from camera 10, sharp and vivid, captured him disconnecting coolant lines, placing a faulty regulator, and then departing without recording a single keystroke. Gasping. Gaze flickered. Silence enveloped the scene, and not a single soul stirred. Darnell remained completely still, his gaze unwavering. Craig's complexion drained of color, his lips parted slightly. "This is completely unrelated," he stuttered. "I was merely conducting some preliminary checks." Eleanor advanced, her voice a blend of strength and elegance. "You undermined your own system, attempted to blame a man who rescued this company from disgrace, and jeopardized our investor relations due to— What is happening? Self-importance?" Craig struggled wildly. "He lacks the qualifications to be present. He's merely—" His voice trembled. Eleanor interrupted him. "He is the reason our prototype remains intact for presentation. He's the reason your department stood strong before the board." She glanced over at security. "Eliminate Mr. Dalton without delay." 2 sentinels glided forward, quiet and quick. Craig hesitated, voicing his objections, yet it all ended before it truly started. He was led out in the same manner he had arrived. In Darnell's narrative, self-important, unapologetic, and completely interchangeable. The atmosphere in the room was utterly tranquil. Eleanor pivoted, now confronting Darnell directly. "You didn't merely repair a machine today, you uncovered a flaw in our foundation, and you accomplished this without seeking recognition." She allowed her words to resonate deeply. "That provides me with everything I require." Yet Darnell remained silent. He offered a subtle nod, his jaw tight with tension. Not out of arrogance, but from a place of mastery. There was no reason to boast. There is no joy in witnessing another's downfall. There is tranquility in maintaining your position. As the crowd trickled away and murmurs faded into the corridors, Darnell lingered to tidy up the tools. The very hands that had faced criticism now polished the path ahead. The following morning, sunlight poured through the expansive glass windows of Eleanor Whitmore's secluded office. The light was warm and golden, imbued with a sense of reverence, reminiscent of the moments just before transformation. Darnell positioned himself by the window, hands neatly clasped before him, his posture upright, yet his gaze held a gentle wonder. Outside, the city throbbed with its typical apathy, yet within these walls, time seemed to stand still. Eleanor, perched at her desk, perusing a slender folder, then raised her gaze to him, a subtle pride shimmering in her eyes. "You could have allowed him to bury you," she stated, without any introduction. "However, you did not. You remained unwavering. You remained silent. You played fair. You allowed the truth to catch up with you." Darnell remained expressionless. He gave a single subtle nod. He spoke softly, recounting how he had faced blame in the past. "This time I was aware that the truth was not alone." Eleanor clasped her hands together. The board was captivated, utterly captivated. "They are considering you for a leadership role, potentially as a team supervisor, or even division lead by next year, with a full salary package. If you desire it, the bonus package is yours for the taking." The silence lingered between them, not oppressive but contemplative. Darnell surveyed the room with a keen eye, the chairs made of leather, the polished marble floors, the realm that countless individuals aspired to ascend into. He turned his gaze back toward her. With a steady and resolute tone, he expressed his gratitude for all that you've accomplished. "For my mum, for having faith in me when no one else did but this." He gave a subtle shake of his head. "This isn't where I'm headed." Eleanor inclined her head, intrigued. "What is it?" He released a slow breath. "The vehicle I own. The one I dismantled. To rescue you. I once found myself resting within it. It transcended mere shelter. That was my sanctuary, my domain, where I repaired things, where I rediscovered my identity." His voice remained steady, yet it took on a richer tone, infused with certainty. There are individuals, young men and women, who lack someone to reveal their true value. There are no opportunities for redemption, no grasping for what once was. I aspire to create something for them. A garage indeed, but also a space for growth, a fresh beginning, perhaps even a way to steer clear of the person I once was, pleading for employment outside a tire shop. Eleanor reclined, quiet and contemplative. "So you're willing to give up a six-figure future for a garage?" "No," Darnell responded softly. "I would stride confidently towards my true calling." She observed him, her gaze sharpening. Not in judgment, but in appreciation. She rose, circled the desk and offered her hand once more. "In that case, I won't hinder your path. Indeed, I'm eager to assist. We'd like to bring you on board as a technical consultant with freelance arrangements and flexible hours, and I will cover your startup expenses, silently. Without publicity, there's no recognition." Darnell grasped, her hand firmly. "Agreed. However, the name displayed on the sign will belong to me. Not to you, not a base, just something straightforward, something genuine." She beamed with delight. "I wouldn't choose it differently." As he departed her office, making his way down the lengthy corridor toward the elevator, a sense of resolution took root within him. Not arrogance, not a sense of relief, a profound essence, similar to purpose establishing its foundation. As he emerged into the sunlight, a vision began to take shape in his thoughts. Half a year later, on a serene stretch of East Mayfield, nestled between a closed laundromat and a partially deserted lot where weeds twisted through fissured concrete, a building pulsed with renewed energy. The worn signage had been removed, replaced by hand-painted letters in striking cobalt red, "Faith Garage," without slogans or sponsors, only an identity and an intention. Within, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of oil and an ancient essence reminiscent of salvation. The walls came alive with murals depicting gears transforming into hands, wrenches dissolving into branches, and youthful faces illuminated by the warm glow of orange shop lights. 5 bays stretched out, accompanied by 3 hoists and 2 lengthy workbenches, all adorned with tools that lacked luster, yet seemed eager to prove their worth once more. At the heart of it all was Darnell Harris, wiser with each passing month, yet more grounded with every step taken. His boots remained scuffed, his coveralls still bore stains, yet the manner in which he held himself now, that was unique. He had moved beyond merely repairing cars. He was shaping individuals, creating journeys. Young people who once lingered at gas stations or played truant now gathered at Faith Garage each afternoon. They discovered the art of balancing torque, mastered the intricacies of rebuilding a carburetor, honed their skills in stripping and repacking a brake line, and embraced the power of showing up, even when no one anticipated their presence. From time to time, Eleanor Whitmore would pay a visit. Silent and unexpected she appears, at times nestled in the rear of a sleek black town car, other times making her entrance alone, her cane softly tapping against the pavement. She lingered only briefly, just enough to take in the scene, provide guidance when sought, and now and then deliver a box of carefully labeled donated parts for the next set of hands to use. On a Friday evening, with the sun sinking low and spilling golden shadows across the shop floor, Darnell was teaching a 15-year-old named Marcus the intricacies of rewiring a starter relay. The young lad was subdued, meticulous, his gaze brimming with uncertainty, still in the process of discovering how to place his faith in the world around him. He had just started visiting the shop a fortnight ago. As they toiled away, Marcus finally inquired, "What's the reason behind opening this place anyway? Isn't it possible that you might be employed by a major corporation?" Darnell kept his gaze down for a moment longer, securing the final bolt. With precision. He leaned back, wiped his hands clean, and stated quietly, "Because no one ever built a place like this for me. I had to grow in the quiet corners. Now I illuminate the path for others." As the evening settled in and the final child waved goodbye, leaving the shop in a serene hush, Darnell found his way outside and took a seat on the curb. The heavens were sprinkled with twinkling stars. Behind him, Faith Garage radiated a gentle glow, warm light pouring through the windows, reminiscent of a hearth nestled in the heart of a forgotten town. A soft engine purred to a stop. Eleanor emerged, this time unaccompanied by her driver, clad in a modest wool coat and clutching a folder. "I have something to share with you," she said. Darnell rose, smoothed his hands over his jeans, and accepted the folder. Within lay a proposal, a new location, identical model, different city, her resources, his ideology. He gazed at her, taken aback. "I mentioned that I wouldn't put my name on the sign," she said softly, a smile on her face, "but I never claimed I wouldn't assist in carrying the light." Darnell hesitated before responding. He softly shut the folder, then turned his gaze back to the garage, to the mural, to the vacant bays, anticipating the touch of tomorrow's hands. He gave a slight nod. They lingered in quiet contemplation for a heartbeat more, two souls that had once been divided by circumstance and hierarchy, now united by a shared mission. As the night deepened, the distant sound of a train echoed through the city, slow and steady, reminiscent of a powerful force making its way back home. The lights in Faith Garage flickered into the late hours, illuminating the night. Meanwhile, a boy, convinced he would always be a burden, gazed at the sign, pondering its significance for his future. At times, when an individual sacrifices everything for an unknown person on the roadside, the universe responds in unexpected ways, and occasionally, just occasionally, fairy tales don overalls and invite you to join us in sharing meaningful stories by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Remember to activate the notification bell to begin your day with deep insights and genuine compassion.